One trend that was instantly noticed in the 2022 Formula One season opener was the collective poor performance of the Mercedes engine teams in comparison to their ambitions. While Mercedes' Works team was cut adrift from the lead battle, no car from McLaren, Williams and Aston Martin made it past Q2 in qualifying, and they occupied the last 6 places in the Grand Prix. It was a miserable evening for those 3 customers, and that was recognised by fans, pundits alike, or even those within the teams themselves. A quick look at the speed traps from qualifying makes for concerning reading, as 5 Mercedes cars filled the bottom 5 positions on the speed trap. Only Williams seemed remotely competitive on the straights, and that could simply be a consequence of a car simply producing less downforce and drag. One car knocked out in the first segment of qualifying, one knocked out in the second. McLaren's 2022 Formula One season has begun in a surprisingly challenging fashion. What looked like one of the most well-sorted cars in the first pre-season test at Barcelona suffered a major downturn in the second test when F1 moved to Bahrain. Those brake cooling problems that massively restricted McLaren's running have had a knock-on impact now the season has started for real. Not because the MCL36 is burning through parts again, but because it's not as well sorted as it should have been, and it has some weaknesses. That led to Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo qualifying 13th and 18th for the season opener. Barcelona was pretty positive for us. I think it's a track which played towards the strengths we currently have, said McLaren technical director James Key. I've got to say, we're obviously surprised. It's been a tough weekend for us. We definitely came in on the back foot, having not tested properly at all last week because of these brake issues that have crept up on us. We knew we were a little bit tight on the front brake temperatures, but here they just rocketed to a level that we didn't predict, so that took a lot of learning and time to fix. But it also meant we were stuck in the garage trying to allow the car to run reliably with the temperatures that we were generating. We didn't really do any optimization in Bahrain, certainly none of what we planned to do. We got some reliability runs, but we didn't really have the time we really wanted to allow the drivers time to get a feel at a very different track, nor to do a lot of work on the setup with the new bits we put on the car. Despite the optimism from James Key, Norris said that he is expecting more pain over the coming races. After the race, Norris said that the opportunity to cover a significant number of laps was the only upside of Bahrain. He said that he learned a lot about how the tyres behave, how they degrade off, and how to treat them. Norris also said that while the team finds a solution, it also needs to be satisfied with its performance to the best of its ability. Norris hopes that just figuring out things and being at the top of every area can get the team to improve strategy, pit stops, etc. McLaren, which last year was competing with Ferrari for the top 3 positions, is now performing in the exact opposite direction. Norris admitted he was putting on a brave face upon arriving at the media pen after the race in Bahrain, and that it looked just as bad as what it felt out on track. It's just where we are, quite simply, Norris explained. We just have to get a little bit used to it now. Of course, over the last few seasons, there has been just a lot of expectation from us within the team, and also everyone else watching and so on. We just haven't got it right at the minute. We're a long way off. Not just a little bit, we're a long way. We've got to start fresh and figure some things out. I'm just trying to find solutions, and solutions doesn't mean next week we're going to be amazing. But in months to come, we need to understand what's going on here and how to get better. Norris added that he was expecting pain and that everyone needs to know there's probably going to be a bit of pain given McLaren's current performance standing. We've been in this position a few years ago, he said. I'm hoping we can remain more optimistic that the team and everyone back at MTC can figure things out and we can get back on track. All 3 Mercedes customer teams struggled on race day in Bahrain, with their complement of 6 cars being the last to take the checkered flag. Asked if straight line speed or engine power was the main limitation McLaren faced, Norris said that while it was definitely definitely not helping. The fact the factory Mercedes cars could finish 3rd and 4th proved there were greater issues at hand for McLaren. We're a long way down on downforce. The handling, therefore, is very poor, Norris said. It's a tricky car and tricky tyres to optimise. And when you just don't have the downforce, you just can't get the tyres working well. You just can't get everything in a good window. You're understeering, you're oversteering, there's just a lot more things going on. I think that's the problem. We just need less things to be going on. We need more rear, more front. It's just downforce, really. It sounds so simple, but it's obviously complicated to figure out. And Norris's teammate Daniel Ricciardo also revealed he was surprised by the struggles of McLaren in Bahrain. After leading the first running of pre-season in Spain in February, McLaren had been tipped to take the fight to Ferrari. So P14 and 15 was not the outcome Ricciardo expected he and Norris would open their 2022 accounts with. Asked if he was surprised by the result, Ricciardo conceded, "It is. I'm always pretty reserved in testing, and I know the reality of maybe getting to race one and things could look different, but I definitely did think that after Barcelona we would be in better shape. Maybe also this could be a bogey track for us, and maybe in a week's time we'll be looking better, but probably a bit more work to do." Ricciardo missed all 3 days of testing in Bahrain through illness before later returning a positive COVID test. Assessing how his physical condition had impacted his performance, the Australian added, "I'd love to lie to you and say I feel awesome, but I certainly felt it. Even if I just take laying in bed, if I forget COVID and just say I've laid in bed for 5 days, that in itself was always going to make the weekend challenging, and probably the addition of feelings of COVID. Not the easiest race I've ever done physically, but I still felt I was able to compete at a high enough level. Happy to get the race distance done, and hopefully it gets easier from here." It's clear Ferrari has taken a big step with its new engine. Pierre Gasly noted that these Ferrari engines are definitely back to where they were in 2019, when it was controversially the most powerful power unit. For now, there are 2 reasons to think the underperformance of the Mercedes customers and the Mercedes Works team being off the pace is more of a coincidence and not because of a defining engine deficit. The first is that McLaren, Aston Martin and Williams all have their car limitations. It was clear in Bahrain that they're all battling their own problems, and that is something none of these teams are hiding from. And without an engine advantage over the likes of Haas and Alfa Romeo like in the past, that is only going to be more ruthlessly exposed. Aston Martin team principal Mike Crack said the collective underperformance of the Mercedes customers had been noted. "This is an observation that we had already quite early," Crack said. "But on the other hand, we see the Mercedes factory team finishing 3rd and 4th. So still with the powertrain, you can do a good job. I think it's for us first to do a proper car or a quicker car before we go too much into what you're observing. The competition has made maybe a bigger step, and that's something we need to do to catch up on." He added, "The factory team is quite far ahead, so I think before we go too much into this subject, I think we should sort out our problems first. There may well be limitations to the Mercedes power unit. It was notable that both McLaren's and at least one Aston Martin had more urgent cooling requirements in the race." Crack's position was shared by his McLaren counterpart, Andreas Seidel. "The most important thing is for us now to simply acknowledge that and compare us to the Mercedes Works team," Seidel said after qualifying. "We miss around a second to Mercedes. That's the best reference for us that we can have. And that's what we're focusing on as a team. The most important factor is what actually caused the straight line speed deficit of the Mercedes Works cars." Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff hinted Mercedes has simply not been able to produce enough parts to have different aerodynamic options, and the result was a big rear wing producing too much drag. He stressed, "We really need to leave no stone unturned on the power unit side, to be certain. I think we need to analyse the drag levels first, before we really make a judgment on whether we're lacking power," Wolff said. Whether the problems of the Mercedes engine can be resolved by the time the next Grand Prix comes around in Saudi Arabia will be a huge point of interest.